October 15, 1975. Nevada test site, 4 in the morning. Soviet reconnaissance satellites capture images of something impossible sitting under American floodlights. An aircraft that looks more like folded paper than aviation engineering. Sharp angles where there should be curves. Flat surfaces where aerodynamics demand smooth metal. In Moscow's Central Intelligence Directorate, senior analyst Viktor Belenko examines the grainy photographs and laughs out loud. American disinformation, he tells his team with complete confidence. No aircraft can be built with those ridiculous angles and still fly. It's obviously a propaganda mock-up. For 30 years, Soviet air defense doctrine has been mathematically perfect. Every American bomber from B-52s to SR-71s lights up radar screens from over 100 miles away. The bigger the aircraft, the brighter the signature. Their SA-6 missile systems require a minimum radar reflection of 5 square meters for successful target lock. Simple physics, unbreakable rules. But 4,000 miles away in Burbank, California, a quiet Lockheed engineer named Denys Overholser has been reading Soviet academic papers that his own colleagues ignore. Papers about bending electromagnetic waves around objects instead of bouncing them back. Papers that describe how to make a full-sized fighter jet appear on radar screens as nothing more than a marble. The Soviets had published the mathematical key to their own defeat and called it purely theoretical. The morning haze over Nevada hung thick as Soviet satellite Cosmos 771 completed its orbital pass at precisely 6:47 a.m. 300 miles above the classified test facility, its cameras captured what Moscow's photo interpreters would later describe as the most bewildering intelligence imagery of the Cold War. Under banks of harsh floodlights sat an aircraft that seemed to mock every principle of aeronautical engineering, a collection of sharp angles and flat surfaces that resembled origami more than aviation. The photographs reached Moscow's Central Intelligence Directorate within 18 hours, transmitted through encrypted channels that connected Plesetsk Cosmodrome to the gray concrete towers of Dzerzhinsky Square. Senior analyst Viktor Belenko spread the grainy black and white prints across his mahogany desk, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses as he studied each frame with the methodical precision that had earned him 30 years of unwavering credibility within Soviet military intelligence. Belenko's laugh echoed through the sterile corridors of the intelligence complex. His subordinates gathered around the desk as he pointed to the angular shape with his silver letter opener. "Gentlemen, observe American desperation," he announced with the confidence of a man who had correctly identified every significant Western aircraft development since the U-2 spy plane. They photographed cardboard mock-ups. Under dramatic lighting and hope our satellites will transmit images of imaginary superweapons back to Moscow. The assembled analysts nodded appreciatively. Belenko's track record spoke for itself. He had accurately predicted the capabilities of the SR-71 Blackbird, the A-10 Warthog, and the F-15 Eagle using nothing more than fragmentary intelligence and mathematical analysis of radar cross-sections. His methods were unassailable because they rested on immutable physical laws. No aircraft can achieve sustained flight with those preposterous angles, Belenko continued, tapping the photographs with growing certainty. Aerodynamics requires smooth surfaces for laminar airflow. These triangular facets would create turbulence that no pilot could control. The Americans are testing our intelligence capabilities with obvious fabrications. For 3 decades, Soviet air defense doctrine had operated on principles as reliable as gravity itself. Every aircraft, from massive B-52 stratofortresses to sleek interceptors, reflected radio waves in predictable patterns determined by size, materials, and surface geometry. The mathematics were elementary. Larger objects produced stronger radar returns. Smaller objects produced weaker signatures, but nothing operational could disappear entirely from electromagnetic detection. Soviet surface-to-air missile batteries positioned around every strategic target from Murmansk to Vladivostok depended on this fundamental truth. The SA-6 gainful system, deployed in overlapping coverage rings around Moscow, Leningrad, and the Baikonur Cosmodrome, boasted kill probabilities exceeding 98% against conventional aircraft. The operational sequence never varied. Detect approaching targets at 120 miles, establish tracking locks at 80 miles, launch interceptor missiles at 40 miles, achieve destruction at 20 miles. The formula had protected Soviet airspace without failure since 1967. American U-2 reconnaissance flights over the Soviet Union had ended abruptly when SA-2 missiles demonstrated their lethal effectiveness against Gary powers. Every subsequent Western penetration attempt had been detected, tracked, and either destroyed or forced to retreat by radar-guided defenses that could identify aircraft signatures from distances exceeding the horizon. But 4,500 miles west of Moscow, in a nondescript Lockheed facility in Burbank, California, soft-spoken engineer Denys Overholser was discovering something extraordinary in the pages of Soviet technical literature that his colleagues routinely discarded as irrelevant academic theory. The paper that captured his attention bore the unremarkable title Method of Edge Waves in the Physical Theory of Diffraction, published openly in 1962 by physicist Pyotr Ufimtsev. Overholser read Ufimtsev's equations with growing fascination during late-night sessions in his cluttered office, surrounded by computer printouts and electromagnetic modeling software. Where Soviet administrators saw purely theoretical mathematics with no practical applications, the American engineer recognized revolutionary potential that could reshape military aviation forever. Ufimtsev's work didn't merely describe how electromagnetic waves scattered off metallic surfaces. It provided mathematical tools for controlling that scattering with unprecedented precision. The equations demonstrated how properly angled surfaces could redirect incoming radar pulses away from their transmission sources, rather than reflecting them directly back to receivers. The implications struck Overholser like a physical blow. An aircraft designed using Ufimtsev's mathematical principles could become functionally invisible to radar systems by scattering electromagnetic energy in controlled directions that avoided detection equipment entirely. Working alone in his laboratory through the winter of 1975, Overholser fed surface angle calculations into Lockheed's most advanced computers, running simulation after simulation to test his revolutionary hypothesis. The printouts that emerged from the humming machines showed numbers that seemed to violate the basic assumptions underlying 3 decades of air defense planning. Radar cross-section, 0.01 square meters. The electromagnetic signature of a marble rolling across a laboratory table. Smaller than most birds in flight. Smaller than weather balloons that radar operators routinely dismissed as atmospheric interference. If Overholser's calculations were correct, the angular aircraft photographed by Soviet satellites represented something unprecedented in military history, a full-sized fighter jet that could penetrate the most sophisticated air defense networks on Earth without triggering a single alarm or appearing on a single radar screen. The quiet engineer stared at his computer results with the dawning realization that mathematical theory, properly applied, had just rendered every surface-to-air missile system from Moscow to Baghdad effectively obsolete overnight. Project Senior Trend received its classified designation in March 1976, buried within the Defense Department's black budget allocation that Congress would never scrutinize. $1.2 billion flowed into Lockheed's Skunk Works division through channels so compartmentalized that even Pentagon comptrollers tracking the expenditure knew only that funds supported advanced aeronautical research somewhere in the California desert. Ben Rich inherited leadership of the most audacious engineering challenge in aviation history, transforming Overholser's impossible mathematics into an operational stealth fighter that could penetrate Soviet airspace undetected. The Skunk Works had built legendary aircraft before, the U-2 that overflew Moscow, the SR-71 Blackbird that outran Soviet interceptors at 3 times the speed of sound. But Senior Trend demanded something unprecedented, an aircraft that violated fundamental principles of aerodynamics in pursuit of electromagnetic invisibility. The F-117 design that emerged from classified wind tunnel testing resembled no aircraft in operational service anywhere on Earth. Instead of smooth curves that sliced efficiently through atmospheric resistance, angular facets covered every surface in precise geometric patterns, calculated to scatter radar energy away from Soviet receivers. Each flat panel had been positioned according to Ufimtsev's equations, creating a flying polygon that looked more like abstract sculpture than military hardware. Traditional aircraft achieved lift-through wing shapes perfected over decades of aeronautical evolution. The F-117's wings were essentially flying triangles, sharp-edged surfaces that generated turbulence and required constant computer-assisted corrections to maintain stable flight. The aircraft's angular geometry sacrificed aerodynamic efficiency for radar invisibility, creating a fighter jet that flew like what test pilots privately described as a wobbly shopping cart with engines. The stealth fighter's skin incorporated classified radar-absorbing materials developed in Lockheed's materials science laboratories. Iron ball paint containing millions of microscopic metallic spheres covered external surfaces designed to convert electromagnetic energy into dissipated heat rather than reflecting radio waves back to their sources. Carbon fiber composites reinforced structural components while maintaining electromagnetic transparency that allowed radar pulses to pass through rather than bounce off. Combined with the angular faceting, these materials reduced the F-117's radar signature to dimensions that existing Soviet detection equipment could not reliably track. The aircraft's electromagnetic footprint measured smaller than most birds in flight, a technological achievement that rendered decades of air defense planning obsolete. Test pilot Hal Farley climbed into the first prototype cockpit on June 18, 1981, carrying classified flight parameters that prohibited ejection over any territory outside American control. The aircraft's angular surfaces created visual signatures that enemy photography could compromise, requiring all test flights to occur during darkness when satellite observation remained limited. Call sign Bandit 117 lifted off from Groom Lake at 2300 hours, its twin engines pushing the ungainly shape into Nevada's star-filled sky. Farley fought constant control inputs as computerized flight systems struggled to maintain stability through an aircraft geometry that conventional aerodynamics said should not fly at all. But the prototype achieved sustained flight, proving that Overholser's theoretical calculations could be transformed into operational military hardware. More importantly, radar tracking stations monitoring the test flight registered intermittent contacts that appeared and vanished without explanation. Ground controllers following Bandit. 117's progress found themselves staring at blank scopes while maintaining radio communication with an aircraft flying directly overhead. The stealth technology worked exactly as mathematics predicted. The F-117 had achieved functional radar invisibility. Meanwhile, 3,000 miles east in Moscow's defense ministry, confidence in Soviet air defense capabilities reached unprecedented heights. The SA-10 Grumble system, recently deployed around the capital and strategic installations throughout the Warsaw Pact, represented the culmination of 3 decades of surface-to-air missile evolution. Its phased array radars could detect conventional aircraft approaching from distances exceeding 200 miles, providing early warning that allowed coordinated responses from multiple battery positions. General Pavel Kutakov addressed the Politburo during their weekly defense briefing with the unwavering certainty that had characterized his entire military career. Standing before a wall-mounted map showing overlapping radar coverage across Soviet territory, he delivered assessments that shaped national defense policy throughout the early 1980s. American bomber penetration of Soviet airspace remains mathematically impossible, Kutakov declared, pointing to colored circles representing SA-6, SA-8, and SA-10 coverage zones. Our integrated defense network can detect, track, and destroy any aircraft larger than 1 square meter radar cross-section. Mathematical modeling confirms that no operational aircraft can achieve signatures smaller than this threshold while maintaining flight capability. Soviet technical literature from this period reflects absolute confidence in radar-based detection principles that had governed air defense doctrine since World War II. Published studies from the Moscow Institute of Technology claimed that achieving radar cross-sections below 1 square meter required structural modifications incompatible with sustained flight operations. The laws of physics, as understood by Soviet aerospace engineers, made stealth technology impossible. Intelligence reports flowing through KGB channels reinforced this technical certainty. American aerospace publications contain no references to operational stealth aircraft development. Western technical conferences discussed theoretical electromagnetic scattering research, but presented no evidence of practical military applications. Soviet analysts concluded that American stealth claims represented psychological warfare designed to create uncertainty about defensive capabilities without corresponding technological substance. By 1983, 59 F-117 Nighthawks operated from Tonopah test range under security protocols that prevented any compromise of stealth technology to foreign intelligence services. The 4450 Tactical Group conducted training missions exclusively during darkness, with pilots receiving explicit instructions that aircraft loss over hostile territory could reveal electromagnetic secrets that had cost over $1 billion to develop. Each combat-ready Nighthawk carried 2,000-pound laser-guided bombs toward targets that Soviet radar operators would never detect approaching. The Nevada desert stretched endlessly beyond Tonopah Test Range's perimeter fencing, where security protocols maintained absolute separation between America's most classified aircraft program and the outside world. 59 F-117 Nighthawks sat in heavily guarded hangars, each one representing technological secrets that could shift the global balance of power if compromised to Soviet intelligence services. Pilots assigned to the 4450 Tactical Group lived double lives that required extraordinary psychological discipline. During daylight hours, they maintained cover identities as conventional fighter pilots stationed at nearby Nellis Air Force Base, flying routine training missions in F-4 Phantoms and A-7 Corsairs that appeared on standard military flight schedules. After sunset, they drove unmarked vehicles through desert roads to Tonopah, where they strapped into cockpits of aircraft that officially did not exist. Night training missions followed strict protocols designed to prevent any visual compromise of stealth technology. F-117 operations commenced only after astronomical twilight, when atmospheric conditions reduced photographic surveillance risks to acceptable levels. Each pilot carried sealed orders, specifying that ejection was authorized exclusively over friendly territory. Aircraft loss in hostile airspace could deliver stealth secrets directly to Moscow's aerospace engineers. The security briefings emphasized consequences with stark clarity. Soviet technical intelligence recovery of F-117 wreckage would provide mathematical analysis of our electromagnetic signature reduction techniques. Compromise of radar-absorbing materials composition would enable countermeasures development within 18 months. Loss of aircraft geometry specifications would allow reconstruction of stealth principles within 36 months. Training sorties pushed the angular fighters through increasingly complex scenarios designed to exploit their revolutionary invisibility. Nighthawks penetrated simulated Soviet air defense networks, constructed using captured SA-6 and SA-8 systems, flying attack profiles against mock targets defended by the same radar-guided missiles protecting Moscow and Leningrad. The results consistently validated Overholser's mathematical predictions. American stealth fighters moved through enemy detection grids without triggering a single alarm. Intercepted Soviet communications from this period reveal growing frustration among radar operators stationed throughout Eastern Europe. Classified NSA transcripts captured conversations between confused technicians, reporting contacts that appeared and vanished without logical explanation. The electromagnetic signatures were too brief for weapons system engagement, too inconsistent for tracking computers to maintain target locks. A particularly revealing intercept from October 1987 recorded dialogue between two radar operators monitoring airspace above East Germany. Contact bearing 270 degrees, altitude angels 20, estimated speed 480 knots. The response crackled through encrypted radio channels. Negative contact on my scope. Check your equipment calibration. Within seconds, the original operator reported, contact lost, signal strength dropped to 0. Must be another atmospheric anomaly. Soviet technical teams investigating these ghost echoes attributed the phenomena to weather-related electromagnetic interference or electronic warfare testing by NATO forces. Intelligence reports flowing through Warsaw Pact command structures consistently dismissed intermittent radar contacts as equipment malfunctions or atmospheric disturbances, rather than evidence of revolutionary American stealth technology. The pattern repeated across multiple radar installations from Poland to Bulgaria. Operators reported brief, unexplained contacts that disappeared before tracking systems could establish reliable target solutions. Soviet doctrine attributed these incidents to known limitations of radar technology when atmospheric conditions created false returns or electronic countermeasures generated phantom signatures. General Ivan Tretyak, commanding Soviet air defense forces throughout the Warsaw Pact region, issued classified memoranda addressing the ghost contact phenomenon with characteristic confidence in established technical doctrine. His 1988 assessment to Moscow headquarters dismissed operator reports as training deficiencies rather than evidence of advanced American aircraft penetrating European airspace. Radar personnel require additional instruction in distinguishing between genuine aircraft signatures and electromagnetic interference patterns, Tretyak wrote in documents later recovered from East German intelligence archives. Properly operated SA-6 and SA-8 systems maintain detection capabilities against all known Western aircraft types. Recent training exercises confirm our defensive networks would successfully engage any penetration attempts by American bomber formations. The general's confidence reflected broader institutional certainty throughout Soviet military leadership. Mathematical modeling conducted at the Moscow Institute of Technology continued to demonstrate that aircraft achieving radar cross-sections below 1 square meter could not maintain operational flight characteristics. Physics textbooks used in Soviet aerospace academies taught that electromagnetic invisibility remained theoretically impossible for full-sized military aircraft. American intelligence agencies monitoring Soviet communications found no evidence that Moscow recognized the true nature of stealth technology development. KGB technical intelligence reports contained no references to operational electromagnetic signature reduction programs in Western defense industries. Soviet aerospace publications discussed theoretical radar-absorbing materials, research but dismissed practical applications as economically unfeasible and technically impractical. The disconnect between American stealth capabilities and Soviet threat assessments created unprecedented strategic asymmetry. F-117 squadrons trained nightly against simulated defenses identical to systems protecting the Soviet Union's most sensitive military installations, achieving penetration success rates that approached 100% across thousands of test sorties. By 1989, Nighthawk pilots had mastered attack profiles that could deliver precision-guided munitions against targets throughout the Warsaw Pact without detection by radar networks that Soviet planners considered impenetrable. The angular stealth fighters moved through electromagnetic environments like ghosts, visible only to infrared sensors and human eyes under ideal atmospheric conditions. Each successful training mission validated mathematical theories that Pyotr Ufimtsev had published openly 27 years earlier, believing his electromagnetic diffraction research held no military significance. The Soviet physicist's equations had become the foundation for American air superiority, transforming abstract theoretical physics into operational weapon systems that could penetrate the most sophisticated air defense networks on Earth. The 4450 Tactical Group maintained absolute readiness for combat deployment, waiting for orders that would test stealth technology against live Soviet missile batteries defending real strategic targets. When those orders arrived, 59 invisible aircraft would prove that mathematical innovation could render decades of military doctrine obsolete overnight. Operation Just Cause commenced at 0100 hours on December 20th, 1989, marking the first operational deployment of stealth technology in combat conditions. 2 F-117 Nighthawks received orders to strike Panamanian Defense Force barracks with precision-guided bombs, targeting military installations that posed direct threats to American personnel stationed throughout the Canal Zone. The mission parameters appeared ideal for testing stealth capabilities against Soviet-designed radar systems. Panama's air defenses relied on SA-7 shoulder-fired missiles and radar-guided anti-aircraft guns supplied through Cuban intermediaries, equipment identical to systems protecting Warsaw Pact installations across Eastern Europe. Intelligence assessments indicated minimal electronic warfare capabilities and limited coordination between defensive positions, creating optimal conditions for stealth fighter operations. Major Greg Feast piloted the lead Nighthawk through Panamanian airspace at 22,000 feet, his aircraft invisible to ground-based radar systems scanning for incoming American strikes. The angular fighter carried two 2,000-pound GBU-27 Pavway laser-guided bombs programmed to destroy the Rio Hato military barracks, where intelligence reports indicated Manuel Noriega's elite forces maintained command and control facilities. The precision-guided munitions required laser designation from the attacking aircraft, demanding that Feast maintain visual contact with his target throughout the final approach phase. At precisely 0237 hours, he released both bombs toward the illuminated barracks complex, expecting to achieve the surgical precision that had characterized thousands of training sorties over Nevada test ranges. The first bomb struck 300 feet east of its intended target, demolishing an unoccupied administrative building instead of the main barracks structure housing Panamanian military personnel. Human error in laser designation, not technological failure, caused the miss, but the psychological impact within Pentagon corridors proved devastating to stealth program advocates who had promised revolutionary accuracy from invisible aircraft. Defense Secretary Dick Cheney faced immediate criticism from congressional oversight committees questioning the cost-effectiveness of stealth technology. "We spent $110 million per aircraft to develop a weapon system that cannot accurately hit a stationary building," declared Representative Les Aspin during closed-door hearings that would influence future defense appropriations. This mission raises fundamental questions about stealth fighter operational capabilities under combat conditions. More concerning intelligence emerged from intercepted Panamanian communications during and after the Rio Hato strikes. Radar operators stationed at Tocumen Airport reported brief, intermittent contacts during the bombing mission, electromagnetic signatures that appeared on their scopes for several seconds before disappearing entirely. While the contacts proved too brief for weapons system engagement, their existence suggested that stealth technology was not perfectly invisible under all operational conditions. The radar detections occurred during specific atmospheric conditions that enhanced electromagnetic propagation beyond normal parameters. Temperature inversions and humidity levels created ducting effects that briefly revealed F-117 signatures to ground-based receivers, providing fleeting glimpses of aircraft that should have remained completely undetectable. The phenomenon lasted mere moments, but those moments were long enough for trained operators to register contacts on their display screens. Soviet technical intelligence services analyzed every available fragment of evidence from Operation Just Cause, through intelligence networks that had penetrated Panamanian military communications since the early 1980s. KGB aerospace specialists studied radar operator reports, bomb damage assessments, and intercepted American radio transmissions to develop comprehensive evaluations of stealth fighter performance under combat conditions. The Soviet analysis, completed within 6 weeks of the Panama invasion, reached conclusions that reinforced Moscow's confidence in existing air defense doctrine. GRU technical assessments determined that American stealth claims represented exaggerated propaganda designed to create uncertainty about Soviet defensive capabilities without corresponding technological substance. The brief radar contacts reported by Panamanian operators proved that properly calibrated detection equipment could identify and track American invisible aircraft under optimal conditions. Lieutenant Colonel Yuri Nazarov, chief aerospace analyst for Soviet military intelligence, drafted classified memoranda that circulated throughout Warsaw Pact defense establishments during early 1990. His assessment dismissed American stealth technology as incremental improvement in radar signature reduction rather than revolutionary breakthrough in electromagnetic invisibility. Enemy aircraft demonstrate reduced radar cross-sections compared to conventional fighters, but remain detectable by properly operated SA-6 and SA-8 systems, Nazarov wrote in reports that influenced Soviet defensive planning throughout the final years of the Cold War. American propaganda emphasizes technological superiority to compensate for declining strategic nuclear capabilities. Traditional air defense networks maintain effectiveness against all known Western aircraft types. The Soviet conclusion reflected broader institutional resistance to acknowledging revolutionary advances in American aerospace technology. 3 decades of successful air defense operations had created organizational culture that trusted proven mathematical models over seemingly impossible claims from Western intelligence sources. Soviet engineers who had designed radar-guided missile systems protecting Moscow and Leningrad possessed absolute confidence in electromagnetic detection principles that had never failed under combat conditions. General Ivan Tretyak reinforced this technical certainty in classified briefings delivered to Warsaw Pact defense ministers throughout 1990. Standing before tactical displays showing overlapping radar coverage across Eastern European airspace, he dismissed American stealth capabilities as marginal improvements that posed no significant threat to properly integrated air defense networks. Panama operation demonstrates limited effectiveness of American electromagnetic signature reduction technology, Tretyak declared with the authority of 30 years' experience in air defense operations. Brief radar contacts prove that existing detection equipment maintains capability against reduced signature aircraft. Our defensive doctrine requires no fundamental revision to counter incremental advances in Western stealth technology. The general's assessment reflected mathematical calculations that appeared unassailable. Soviet radar systems had successfully detected and tracked every American aircraft type from U-2 spy planes to SR-71 Blackbirds using electromagnetic principles that physics textbooks taught were immutable. Stealth technology might reduce radar signatures, but complete invisibility remained impossible for operational military aircraft that required structural integrity and flight performance. This institutional confidence would persist until January 17, 1991, when 42 F-117 Nighthawks crossed into Iraqi airspace carrying orders that would demonstrate the true revolutionary potential of mathematical theories that Pyotr Ufimtsev had published as purely academic research 29 years earlier. Baghdad's integrated air defense network represented Soviet military engineering at its most sophisticated, comprising 60 SA-2, SA-3, SA-6, and SA-8 missile batteries positioned in overlapping coverage zones that extended from the Iranian border to the Jordanian frontier. French-supplied Roland surface-to-air missiles provided low-altitude protection around strategic targets, while ZSU-23-4 Shilka anti-aircraft guns created terminal defensive layers using radar-guided 23mm cannons capable of firing 4,000 rounds per minute. Iraqi Air Defense Command operated from underground bunkers beneath Baghdad, using the same tactical doctrine that had successfully protected Soviet airspace for 3 decades. Early warning radars detected approaching aircraft at maximum range, coordinated multiple battery engagements through centralized fire control systems, and saturated target zones with overlapping missile coverage that guaranteed destruction of penetrating bombers. The mathematical certainty underlying this defensive philosophy had proven itself during the Iran-Iraq War, when Iraqi SA-6 batteries achieved kill ratios exceeding 90% against Iranian F-4 Phantoms and F-14 Tomcats. Soviet technical advisors stationed throughout Iraq expressed complete confidence that American aircraft would face identical destruction rates when coalition forces attempted strategic bombing campaigns against defended targets. At precisely 0251 hours, local time on January 17, 1991, 42 F-117 Nighthawks crossed from Saudi airspace into Iraq, carrying orders that would test stealth technology against the most comprehensive air defense network outside the Soviet Union itself. Each angular fighter carried 2 2,000-pound GBU-27 paveway laser-guided bombs programmed for targets throughout Baghdad's government quarter, command bunkers, communication centers, air defense headquarters, and ministry buildings that coordinated Iraqi military operations. The Nighthawks approached their targets through electromagnetic environments that should have triggered every alarm system protecting the Iraqi capital. Early warning radars capable of detecting conventional aircraft from distances exceeding 150 miles swept continuously across approaches from Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and Turkey. SA-6 gainful missiles positioned around strategic installations maintained active guidance radars that could track multiple targets simultaneously while coordinating engagement sequences through automated fire control computers. What happened next violated every principle of air defense doctrine taught in Soviet military academies. Baghdad's radar screens displayed empty airspace, while precision-guided bombs began exploding throughout the city's most heavily defended areas. Iraqi Air Defense Command received frantic reports of buildings collapsing under direct attack, but their radar operators found nothing to engage. No contacts, no tracks, no electromagnetic signatures that could be fed into missile guidance systems. Major Bob Eskridge piloted his Nighthawk through airspace above the Iraqi Ministry of Defense, invisible to SA-8 Gecko missiles positioned less than 2 miles from his flight path. The Soviet-designed radar systems swept past his aircraft without registering any return signals stronger than atmospheric background noise. At 22,000 feet altitude, traveling at 480 knots indicated airspeed. His F-117 maintained electromagnetic invisibility while delivering laser-guided munitions with surgical precision against targets below. Intercepted Iraqi communications captured the confusion consuming Baghdad's defensive network as stealth attacks continued throughout the night. "Command center under attack! Aircraft overhead!" crackled through radio frequencies monitored by coalition intelligence services. The response revealed complete bewilderment. Negative contact on all radar frequencies. Request visual confirmation. Within seconds, the original transmission reported, "No visual contact possible. Buildings exploding. No aircraft signatures detected." The pattern repeated across dozens of high-value targets throughout Baghdad as F-117 squadrons methodically destroyed Iraqi command and control infrastructure. SA-6 operators frantically swept their radar beams across empty sky, while Nighthawks delivered precision strikes against air defense headquarters buildings visible through their cockpit windows. Soviet-designed early warning systems that could detect sparrows in flight found nothing larger than background electromagnetic noise. Iraqi Air Defense Command launched over 100 surface-to-air missiles during the first night of coalition air operations, firing at phantom contacts that appeared briefly on radar screens before vanishing completely. SA-8. Gecko missiles streaked through Baghdad's night sky toward empty coordinates where tracking computers had momentarily detected electromagnetic anomalies. Every missile detonated harmlessly in vacant airspace, their proximity fuses triggered by atmospheric interference rather than aircraft targets. The technological asymmetry proved absolute. Coalition planners had expected to lose multiple aircraft during initial strikes against Baghdad's heavily defended targets. But stealth technology achieved something unprecedented in modern warfare: complete tactical surprise, maintained throughout sustained combat operations. F-117 Nighthawks moved through Iraqi airspace like electromagnetic ghosts, visible only to infrared sensors and human observers under optimal atmospheric conditions. Over 43 consecutive nights of combat operations, Nighthawk squadrons flew 1,271 individual sorties against heavily defended targets throughout Iraq. They struck 1,600 high-value installations with laser-guided bombs that achieved 80% accuracy rates, placing munitions within 10 feet of designated aim points. 0 F-117 aircraft losses occurred due to enemy action. 0 successful radar lock-ons were achieved by Iraqi surface-to-air missile systems throughout the entire air campaign. The same Soviet-designed defensive networks protecting Moscow, Leningrad, and strategic installations throughout the Warsaw Pact had proven completely ineffective against stealth technology. SA-6 gainful missiles that Iraqi operators had used successfully against Iranian aircraft during 8 years of previous warfare could not engage targets they could not detect. Radar-guided anti-aircraft guns remained silent because their fire control systems found no electromagnetic signatures to track. In Moscow's Central Intelligence Directorate, senior analyst Viktor Belenko reviewed gun camera footage from Baghdad strikes with growing comprehension of technological reality he had dismissed for 15 years. The same angular aircraft he had identified as American disinformation in 1975 moved across classified video screens with electromagnetic invisibility that rendered Soviet air defense doctrine obsolete. Belenko drafted his final intelligence assessment on stealth technology with the professional honesty that had characterized his entire career. Previous evaluations of American electromagnetic signature reduction capabilities were fundamentally incorrect, he wrote in classified memoranda that reached Defense Ministry leadership within 48 hours. Existing air defense doctrine requires complete revision to address operational aircraft achieving radar cross-sections below detection thresholds of all deployed missile systems. The memorandum arrived too late to influence strategic planning. By February 28, 1991, coalition forces had achieved total air superiority over Iraq without losing a single stealth aircraft to Soviet-designed defenses that had protected Baghdad more comprehensively than any target outside the Soviet Union itself. Mathematical theory, applied through democratic innovation and engineering excellence, had rendered an entire military doctrine obsolete overnight.